how can you predict a silent stroke when it has no symptoms at all? Is it even possible? Have you ever wondered how it's even possible to predict a silent stroke when there are no symptoms at all? It sounds impossible, like trying to stop a thief you can't see, hear, or feel. But what if the real key isn't in spotting the symptoms, but in understanding the deeper forces that lead to stroke before it ever strikes? Just like an ancient commander preparing for battle, know yourself, know your enemy. We too must study both our bodies and this silent threat. Because a silent stroke doesn't announce itself with a slurred word or a collapsed limb. Instead, it creeps in quietly, harming parts of the brain that manage memory, emotion, and balance. And when the signs do appear, like sudden forgetfulness or unstable walking, they're often mistaken for just normal aging. But they're not normal. They're warnings, and they're far more common than most of us realize. So before we dive deeper, ask yourself, are you ignoring the subtle signs that your brain may already be under attack? Let's uncover the truth. Before we go any further, I want to tell you a story that just might sound familiar. Carol, 76, lives in a quiet town in Missouri. She still drives herself to the grocery store every Wednesday, keeps up with her garden, and never misses a Sunday crossword puzzle. But a few months ago, she began noticing little things. She forgot the names of familiar streets she'd driven for decades. She laughed at odd moments in conversations. She started tripping over her own feet while walking across the kitchen. Her family thought it was just getting older. But when she slipped on the porch one evening and was taken to the ER, a CT scan revealed something shocking. Multiple silent strokes, small, hidden injuries in her brain likely accumulated over time. Carol had never experienced a classic stroke. No slurred speech, no facial drooping, no sudden weakness. But the damage was already there, and it was permanent. She told her doctor, "If I hadn't fallen, I never would have known. I would have just kept blaming myself for getting clumsy and forgetful." That moment changed everything. So, what exactly is a silent stroke, and why is it such a formidable, hidden enemy? Simply put, it's a condition where a part of the brain is damaged because its blood supply is suddenly cut off, causing brain cells to lack oxygen and nutrients and eventually die. The main difference is that this damage often occurs in areas of the brain that don't directly control easily noticeable functions like major movements or clear speech. Therefore, a person usually doesn't experience sudden signs like a drooping face, arm or leg weakness, or slurred speech. Instead, the signs can be very subtle, easily mistaken for something else, or dismissed altogether. How can we recognize these silent signals? Even though they're silent, they can still send out subtle warnings we need to pay attention to. Unusual memory decline, forgetting recent events more often, or finding it harder to concentrate than before. Unexplained emotional changes, becoming more easily emotional, laughing or crying at inappropriate times, or having more difficulty controlling personal emotions. Gait or walking may become less steady, with an increased tendency to lose balance. Feeling disoriented or having trouble navigating even familiar places. In some cases, there might be issues with bladder control. It's worth noting that this brain damage is often only discovered accidentally when a person has a CT scan or MRI of the brain for an unrelated health reason. So just how dangerous is this silence? Don't underestimate its stealth. Every single area of brain damage from a silent stroke, no matter how small, is permanent. Over time, the accumulation of these small injuries can lead to serious consequences. Progressive cognitive decline. This affects concentration, information processing, and logical thinking, going beyond simple forgetfulness. Significantly increases the risk of vascular dementia, a serious condition of declining brain function. Acts as a stepping stone to a major stroke. People with a history of silent strokes face a higher risk of experiencing a full-blown stroke with severe symptoms and long-term disabilities. Negatively impacts mood and behavior, potentially leading to anxiety or depression. Medical experts warn that silent strokes are much more common than strokes with obvious dramatic symptoms. This means that many of us could be walking around with hidden brain damage without even knowing it. And remember, strokes in general, including these hidden attackers, remain one of the leading causes of death and permanent disability worldwide. To better understand strokes, let's focus on the most common type.
Ischemic stroke. That's when blood flow to the brain is blocked. Picture blood being pumped from your heart up to your brain through main pipelines called the carotid arteries on either side of your neck. From there, blood flows into smaller branches within the brain, and one of the key intersections often affected is the middle cerebral artery. Statistics show that over 80% of all strokes are caused by a blood clot suddenly blocking one of these vessels. So what exactly is a blood clot? It's made up of tiny blood cells called platelets and a natural glue in our blood called fibrin. Interestingly, the body's clotting mechanism is usually a friend. When a blood vessel is injured, say when you get a cut, a clot forms to stop the bleeding and patch up the tear.
However, a blood clot becomes a dangerous culprit when, number one, it forms abnormally inside already damaged arteries, for example, due to plaque buildup from atherosclerosis. Or a clot from somewhere else, like the heart or a large plaque in the carotid artery, breaks particles, travels with the bloodstream up to the brain, and gets lodged, causing a blockage. In these cases, the clot causes a region of the brain to be starved of blood and oxygen, leading to serious damage. Doctors often intervene with medications to dissolve the clot or procedures to remove it. But here's the crucial point. Just focusing on the blood clot is like only treating the symptom without getting to the root cause. So what are the real enemies, the underlying causes of a stroke? If you look into that, you'll find some interesting things. Number one, high blood sugar. High sugar levels in the blood create a lot of oxidative stress and cause significant damage to the arteries. Therefore, there's a much stronger link between people with diabetes, pre-diabetes, or insulin resistance and the formation of blood clots. Too much sugar in your diet and too many carbs can create this problem. Not to mention, it really increases your inflammation and also activates something called the sympathetic nervous system. Simply put, that's your body's stress response. That brings us to number two, adrenaline, or you could call it epinephrine. Adrenaline comes from stress, and adrenaline can directly increase the risk of a stroke, especially chronic adrenaline or epinephrine from chronic stress. Chronic stress causes blood vessels to constrict, but it also creates a lot of inflammation, and it makes your body run on glucose. This is interesting because now this overlaps with number one, eating a lot of sugar. But in this case, you're not eating any sugar. The sugar that's present is coming from the stress state. So the combination of eating a high-carb diet along with stress is just a deadly combination for so many issues. These things I'm talking about are the real enemies that we need to understand and try to minimize as much as possible. When we talk about chronic stress, there are many different types, and I think the biggest stress is emotional stress, especially losses. Loss of a loved one, loss of a job, loss of money, loss of anything can be very, very devastating to your body. And then we also have side effects from medications, like HRT, hormone replacement therapy. That would be exposure to a lot of estrogen. Also, birth control pills also increase the risk of getting these strokes. Number four is smoking. Now, how can smoking, you breathe it into your lungs, actually cause a stroke? Where do that smoke and those chemicals go? It goes into your lungs, straight into your bloodstream, and then it's carried up to your brain. And the smoke that ends up in your brain creates a lot of oxidative stress, free radical damage, and many other problems. Risk factor number five, hypertension, also known as high blood pressure. When we talk about high blood pressure, there's an important point to understand. Chronically high blood pressure itself is a major issue. It can directly cause a dangerous type of stroke called a hemorrhagic stroke. That's when a blood vessel in the brain ruptures, causing bleeding. However, when we dig deeper, we find that in the vast majority of cases, around 90%, doctors call this condition essential hypertension or primary hypertension. Simply put, this means that current medical science hasn't identified a single direct cause for high blood pressure in these individuals. Sounds strange, doesn't it? A lot of people have high blood pressure but don't really know why. However, this doesn't mean we're helpless. Instead of just focusing on the blood pressure reading, scientists have discovered many other hidden culprits, underlying lifestyle factors and health conditions that contribute to pushing our blood pressure up. And addressing these culprits is what truly helps us manage blood pressure from the root cause. So what are these hidden culprits?
Number 1 is insulin resistance. A diet high in sugar and refined carbs will cause artery walls to thicken and become stiff. When that happens, arteries lose their natural flexibility and elasticity, causing blood pressure to rise. So this brings us back to the problem with our first enemy, high blood sugar. Number 2, potassium deficiency. Now, what does potassium have to do with our arteries? Well, potassium helps keep our arteries elastic and flexible. Without enough potassium, your arteries can become very stiff and your blood pressure can go up. There's a lot of data showing that getting enough potassium helps keep your blood pressure in a normal range. So, where does potassium come from? It comes from many foods that are also rich in magnesium, and that would be leafy green vegetables. The average person might only eat about 1.5 cups
Of vegetables a day, when they really need something like, 7 to 10 cups of salad or 4 to 5 cups of regular vegetables daily. And a lack of potassium can also cause heart rhythm problems like atrial fibrillation, which is another risk factor for stroke. And then we also have vitamin D deficiency, which a lot of people have. A lack of vitamin D will create more inflammation. It will also increase your risk of, pre-diabetes, diabetes, and insulin resistance. And so I always recommend getting enough vitamin D and potassium, and that people consider a low-carb diet. That seems to really help with a lot of hypertension cases, which indirectly helps significantly reduce your risk of a stroke. So when we talk about predicting a silent stroke, if someone is eating a lot of carbs, okay, and they're diabetic, and they don't eat much salad, and they're going through a lot of stress, and they're sedentary, those are the real enemies, the factors that will predict a stroke. So, number 1, follow a keto diet and intermittent fasting. Number 2, make sure you have enough salad in your diet. That way you'll get potassium and magnesium. Number 3, start a regular exercise program to flush out adrenaline and accumulated stress, things that ultimately cause a lot of problems and kill a lot of people. And also make sure you're eating nutrient-dense foods to provide B vitamins, vitamin C, vitamin E, and vitamin D for all the other support needed to build a healthy body. However, this does not mean that we should self-diagnose or self-treat, especially with serious medical conditions. This YouTube channel aims to provide additional information so you can better understand your body and have more effective discussions with your doctor. Silent strokes don't give second chances. They don't come with alarms, and they rarely get caught until it's too late. But now you know what really causes them, how they hide, and most importantly, what you can do to stop them. Whether it's managing high blood pressure, reducing chronic inflammation, getting more kali, potassium from leafy greens, or simply moving your body every day, every small step matters. If you've been ignoring those subtle changes, forgetfulness, emotional ups and downs, shaky balance, don't brush them off. They may not just be aging. They may be a silent cry for help from your brain. Please, talk to your doctor. Ask about your risk for silent stroke. Review your lifestyle, your lab work, and your stress levels. And take action, not out of fear, but out of love for your future self and the people who love you. Don't let silence be the reason you didn't survive, because sometimes the most dangerous stroke is the one you never saw coming.